I don't know, I can't.
Yeah.
If you stand right there, I'm gonna have to do it.
All right. Well, welcome, folks. Apparently, word got out that I was going to be filling in for the doctor, so
I didn't know that. I took
we
a chance.
we see a massive. I feel like the farmer that went out and was talking to a bud of his. He says, "What do you do when you go out to feed the cows and only one cow shows up?" He says, "Well," the preacher said, "Well, I feed that one cow." So we will go ahead and have the service today, just you and I. Well, at the end of the service, the preacher said, "Well, how did I do?" He says, "Well, when I said I went out to feed the cow, I didn't unload the whole trailer full of hay." So I'll try to keep it short and to the point for you tonight. We were talking tonight about some of the things that's happening in our society today. Nothing but, I got to where I don't even look at the news because it's all so negative. And if Gordon's got an entitled to his opinion, as long as it agrees with my opinion. But if it doesn't, then the tendency is we need to try to demonize him and beat him up and make him look bad and ruin his reputation. That's kind of the situation we're in today. And that's not where we should be, certainly as Christians. Most of us probably know someone that we'd really rather not be around, which is why there's not so many people here tonight. But nothing's ever right in their world. Something's always wrong. I have a good friend that had for nearly 20 years. We go to breakfast quite often together, and he finds a cloud in every silver lining that there is. He travels a lot. He spends over $60,000 a year traveling, and always goes first class. So he makes one of these trips, and I came back and said, "Well, how was your trip?" And for the next 15 minutes, I had to listen to luggage being lost. They overcharged him for this. Didn't have enough, the whole nine yards. And then he showed me about a dozen pictures of some of the most beautiful places I'd ever seen. But he focuses on the negative every time. And our challenge as Christians particularly is not to be one of those people or be negatively influenced by some of those people. But part of the stuff I'm going to tell you in my presentation is, like my dad used to say, don't do what I do, do what I say do. And as an example of that, I worked in Chicago at the Sears Tower for a number of years. And as it would happen, I'd coming in very early, I'd run into this same woman. I never knew who she was. But, you ride the elevator with her, and I would say, "Well, how you doing today?" Everything was wrong. Her boss was bad. The bus was late. It was snowing. It was raining. There was something always wrong. And after months and months and months of that, I finally said, "Ma'am, I apologize to you. I ask you every morning how you're doing, and I ruin the rest of your day because you tell me how bad everything is. So I promise you I'm never going to speak to you ever again in my life." Now, I messed up a great opportunity to be a good witness to her and at least share to her the difference that Jesus can make in your life. So please don't do that kind of stuff. As the writer of Hebrews says, we should encourage each other even as much more as we see the day approaching. And if you read the headlines and you don't see the day approaching, we need to go back and look at Ezekiel and Daniel, Matthew, and Revelations, because the way I study it, the day is fast approaching. Because it was always said when I was a kid that Jesus is coming back just any time. Well, that was impossible at that time. The nation of Israel wasn't there. There was no way to keep up with all the 666 numbers and all that stuff. But all that's come to pass in these days. In Timothy writes, "For people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having the appearance of godliness, but denying the power. Avoid such people. You see those kind of people around today? Well, certainly they are. Do you know what the number one picture taken today is? Selfies. It's selfies. Just like it said right here. Or Facebook. Lord help me, I don't understand that. And quite honestly, I don't really care what you had for lunch, you know. And that's kind of, I only hear about this secondhand because I don't look at that. But what we need to be is an encourager of other people, and again, so much more of the time. What does it hurt when you're in McDonald's and say something to the lady behind the cashier? How are you doing today? How's the world treating you? It doesn't cost anything, but you'd be surprised at the reaction you get. Having said that, I will tell you though, because my wife will if I don't, I have about zero patience with poor customer service, having spent 40 years taking care of the customer and having them the main focus. But I try to, I really do. But just saying something nice to somebody, or holding the door open for them, or how's the world treating you today? You know, it's that old song, give the world a smile each day, helping someone on life's way. Another, I guess this is the confession of the soul here. Another don't do kind of thing. Back last year, when the COVID was really going on, Ann has asthma, so she stayed pretty self-contained at home. And occasionally, when I go out to get groceries as early as I can in the morning. So that one morning getting groceries, she rode with me to sit there just to have an outing. Get the groceries, and you know, if you go to Kroger's, there's 9 million spots at Kroger. And no matter what time of day I go, I park away from everybody, so my car doesn't get dinged up. So I got the groceries, and I'm coming. Ann gets out of the truck and starts trying to help load. Left the back door of the truck open, and I'm putting stuff in the trunk. And out of the corner of my eye, I see this SUV turn in and start angling towards the truck. And I keep unloading. And then all of a sudden, this person starts beeping on the horn. And I looked up, and she's coming closer and closer to that open door. So I went over and slammed the door and says, you know, like it's all yours. And she beeps again and comes closer to the car. And at that point, I'm headed to the driver's door to get that person by the throat and drag them around the parking lot. And then all of a sudden, I see it's a lady, and she's laughing. And it turns out to be Linda Shillings. Linda and I have been friends forever. But at that particular moment, I wasn't wanting to be an encourager. I was going to encourage her not to do that again. Now, we've laughed about that many times, but at that moment, I wasn't interested in being an encourager. Yeah, there wasn't any brotherly love in that. Well, to be an encouraging neighbor, we're going to look at a story tonight that we all know and probably know by heart, but we're going to try to take a look at it a little bit differently. So, Gordon, if you will, and we're going to look at Luke chapter 10. Luke chapter 10. Verses 25 through 37, and it's the story of the Good Samaritan. So, Gordon, if you will.
Beginning at Luke 10:25. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? What is written in the law? He replied. How do you read it? He answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. You have answered correctly, Jesus replied. Do this and you will live. But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? In reply, Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed on the other side. So too, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? The expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. Jesus told him, go and do likewise.
Okay. We all know that story. You've heard it talked about and preached about in Vacation Bible School about all these years. But let's take a little closer look at it, if you will. Some of the key things is there that he went down from Jerusalem and that he was stripped of his raiment, leaving him half dead. So what happens is the priest comes by, he makes a conscious decision to not get involved. He moved away. It was a personal choice. Kind of like the personal choice I made not to talk to that lady ever again on the elevator. You know, it was not, let me not get involved with that. And then a Levite was also one of the religious leaders, but they did some of the lesser things in the temple, like washing the dishes and things like that, the sacramental bowls and all. But again, he made a personal choice not to get involved. And then came along the Samaritan, and he made a choice, a personal choice, to get involved. So what did he do? He looked on him, he dressed his wounds, bound him up, put him on his donkey, and by the way, since he was left without any clothes, he would have put on, the Samaritan would have given him some of his clothes to wear. And probably, more, it doesn't say, but probably walked beside him as the guy rode his donkey. And it says, the certain lawyer said, who was that? He's the one that showed mercy to him. And so what is your choice to do today? Having just celebrated Thanksgiving and Christmas and those kind of things, that gives us a good time to pause and think about all the blessings that we have and enjoy, and not about what we don't have, how we can help other folks. One of our longtime church members here said years ago, I'm just glad God put me on the giving end. You know, just think about that. And how long are we going to have to do that? Jesus said the poor will be with us always. So this great society that Roosevelt and Johnson started is not going to cure the problem. So let's look a little closer. There was a nameless certain lawyer. He was a scribe, an expert in the law. The Message Bible used scholar. The NIV uses expert. So he was an expert on the law and knew all there was to know about the law. And he asked him, he really didn't know the answer. He already had his mind made up. What must I do to inherit eternal life? He knew the answer to that. There's a God hole in every man's heart that is looking for something bigger than they are. Always has been. Look at all the number of gods that's talked about in the Old Testament as they went through on their way to the promised land. This guy already knew the answer. He already had his mind made up. He didn't want him to know anything new, but he was trying to trick Jesus. And again, since it's a personal confession, I used to do the same thing. I want to hurry up and get through the Bible study, you know. Oh yeah, so I can check off. One of the worst things ever invented by the Southern Baptist Convention is the 8-point record system. None of y'all back there are old enough to know what that is, but...
I loved it.
Huh? Oh,
I loved it.
yeah, I know. Well, Bible study was my downfall on that, you know. I left that they used to give us quarterlies, and I left that in the car so I could read it in the 5 minutes it took to go from my house to the church.
Studied lessons.
Studied lessons, and that was like 15%. And giving was like 15%, and those kind of things. And I never could make 100 on that. Randy's been my